How would you describe your childhood?
My childhood was pretty awesome. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I was born to, the second child of my parents. They had me at 23, and I married at 20. We lived in an apartment for like the first 4 years of my life, but then my dad built my mom a house. And so we moved into that house when I was 5 and stayed there till I was about 16. My dad was in ministry my entire life, still is. He was a pastor, an associate pastor, worked all throughout ministry. My mom was also, so I grew up in church. So essentially I was born on a pew. So church was a regular part of, my everyday. I was in church probably 3-4 times a week. Participated in, the church plays and the musicals and, all that good stuff. But even outside of that, I was fairly privileged as a child, even especially being a young African American girl. I grew up upper middle class. My parents had great jobs. We traveled. My parents gave me and my brother a lot of advantages in life.
When did your attraction to women develop and grow?
So I remember being about 5 or 6 years old. I know I was in kindergarten at the time, and I was on my way home from school, and it was towards the end of the bus ride. I was one of the last stops to get off, so the bus was basically empty. And I remember being in the back of the bus with my best friend at the time, which was another kindergartner. And for whatever reason, I don't even know, the real outline of it, but I ended up kissing her, on that particular day. And I remember in that act, it felt natural. And so from that point on through a lot of my childhood, I ended up having a lot of similar situations where, these attractions to girls would develop, and I would end up kissing girls on the playground, and stuff like that. And while a lot of my friends were around, talking about the boys that they liked and who they had crushes on and, everything like that, I just didn't have those same feelings and desires. And so, as I progressed throughout, my elementary years, that was just something that was just always seemed to stick inside of me. And that, while it may not have been prominent or something I was doing on a regular basis, I do know that for whatever reason, I tended to have these strong sexual urges as a kid. And so, and I never really understood where they came from. I never really knew what to do with them. I just knew that they were there. And so, from that came the acting out and the kissing girls and things of that nature. And that progressed on for a while until I was about in middle school, because around that time I realized that liking girls wasn't like acceptable or normal. And it's not that I didn't realize that when I was younger, because even then being at the age that I was, I knew not to let anybody see me doing that. Or, I knew it needed to be something to hide. But in middle school, like the social pressure and the peer pressure of being around, friends and playing sports and things of that nature, I just realized that liking girls just didn't seem to be okay. And so I went through a period of time where, I didn't really have anybody that I interacted with. I had girls that I liked or I may secretly have had a crush on, or, whatever the case may be. But it just wasn't something that I was acting on at the time. And so that all, was a part of my journey until I got in high school. And I was around, 14 years old. And that's when I had my first girlfriend.
What struggles did you experience while in the homosexual lifestyle?
So, like I stated, I had my first girlfriend when I was about 15, 14, 15 years old, around there. and it felt natural. You know what I'm saying? I had gotten to a place to where, like, as a kid, I never felt like the girl that most guys liked. So, like, I always had, like, super pretty friends, like, and all my other friends I felt like were really pretty, and guys seemed to really like them and to be attracted to them, but I never seemed to be that girl. And so at that time, at being 14, 15 years old, I started getting attention, but I'm getting it from another girl. And so it tended to fill this void that I had. And it was difficult to kind of reconcile that, to kind of be okay with that, because I knew how I'd been raised, and, you know, growing up in church, and what I was taught, and what I knew was in the Bible, and what God's expectation of me was. But at the same time, it just seemed natural, because I then thought back to how I felt at 5 and 6 years old, and kissing those girls and things of that nature. And so it was more about me giving in to the desire of wanting to be wanted, and liking the attention, and being accepted by, you know, another person, and feeling like another person desired me, was where that all stemmed from. And so now I'm going through this journey, and I'm realizing that I'm good with dealing with girls. Like, I tended to be liked by girls, and that girls were attracted to me, and that I knew how to talk to them, and I knew how to, you know, get them to interact with me in certain ways. And so it was one of those things that the more I got into it, the more I enjoyed it, and the deeper I got in. But at the same time, I still had this internal battle because of what I was taught. And so, you know, I go throughout high school and in college, you know, deal in this lifestyle. And I'm in relationships, I'm in serious relationships. You know, I dated one girl for almost 8 years, you know, and it was just one of those things that I felt like, this is just what I'm going to do, essentially. Because I think that the part that was hard for me was that I never believed I was born gay. Like, I never bought into that. I always believed that I made a series of decisions that led me down the path that I ended up on. And I developed a lifestyle, and I developed habits, and I got to a place to where it was what I did. It became a part of who I was, even though it may not have been who I was created to be. And so the difficulty with that was because I did not necessarily believe that I was born that way, and that I made choices. My dad always told me that you take responsibility for the decisions that you make, and that whether the consequences be good or bad, you take the consequences. And so I got to a point in college where I desperately did feel like I wanted out of the lifestyle. There was a longing on the inside of me that felt like, this isn't right, and it doesn't line up with what I know about God. But on the other hand, I felt inside of me that I had betrayed God, because I walked away from him. And it's not like I didn't know him. It's not like I wasn't raised in church. Like, I had experienced God, I had experienced his presence. And now all of a sudden, I'm like, I have this desire to know him again. But I felt like I had gone too far, and I had done too much. And it was just really hard to feel like he would accept me back. And so I just continued on with what I was doing, again, because I was raised to take responsibility for the consequences of, you know, any decision that I made. And so what ended up happening is that I just decided that I was in it, and this is what I'm going to do. And I just reconciled that I would just be apart from God for the rest of my life. Me and God really had an unspoken agreement that I didn't mess with him and he didn't mess with me. So I didn't pray. I didn't talk to God. I didn't ask him for anything. Because I felt like, how can I ask you to come rescue me from something when I chose to do this, that I decided to be in this, and I turned my back on you. So I'm not going to ask you to come save me. I'll just take the consequences of my decisions.